Hey there, welcome to episode 120 of the FFS Talk audio program. I'm your host, Dan Hugo, recording this at 12:01 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time here in Greater Vegas on this Thursday, March 12, 2026. We normally publish on Thursdays, sometimes in the morning, but today it'll be in the early afternoon. FFS, today's title and topic, age verification. Hopefully you're old enough to be listening to this. The FFS Talk audio program, if you're not familiar, is designed to be a conversation, a debate, maybe an outright argument about various topics. But I've never actually looked for guests. Why? Because booking guests in Vegas is very tricky. So, no, I've also enjoyed actually being able to voice my opinions and concerns and whatnot, planting seeds of future discussion. So into the future, what you get sometimes when you ask someone to come on and talk about something, if they don't really know you, then they may or may not, and you don't have like a huge audience. I'm just under Joe Rogan and Mel. I don't remember her last name. I shouldn't even have mentioned. I can't remember her last name. But I'm a little bit below them on the podcast audience rankings. So, do I get her name? Mel Robbins. How could I forget that? Okay. Thank you, Internet. So here we're basically building up a library of starting points for future conversations. How cool is that? So the FFS Talk audio program is designed to hopefully constructively discuss, debate, argue, etc., around various topics. So today's is age verification. If you are not familiar with what FFS means, it's something you'll probably hear quite a bit in the actual Dublin in Ireland. I don't know if you'll hear it in Dublin, California, but it's a frequently used Irish expression. They even abbreviated FFS as I have here. But if you've never heard that or don't know what it is, head on over to Ireland and you'll hear it more often. Or you can ask around. I think there are over 50 million Irish people in the United States, a little bit bigger than the island. On that note, hopefully wherever you found this audio program, you're able to locate the episode description, which contains the show notes, including a brief one-sentence summary, which I'll read to you, and the links for today's episode. There's too much changing for age verification right now, too much stuff going on. So I only have the usual show links today, the homepage and the profile page, linking everything. So brief, and then we'll get on with the show. So without further ado, the summary of today's episode. Age verification online has become the new hot topic in a time of so many hot topics. And this is going to be another example of good intentions going wrong. As usual, the FFS Talk audio program can be found at its homepage, ffstalk.com. It does look like FF Stalk. That's also a possibility, but ffstalk.com. Is my website looking nicer? It depends on when you listen to this. Profile page linking everything. I did create my buymeacoffee.com/Dan Hugo profile in March of 2021, making this about 12. Today's the 12th, making this about 5 years old. I basically use it for a sort of out-of-band homepage. So I have all my links on it. It's like a free-form link tree, if you like. So I have all my links to all of my audio programs and different projects and biographical information. You are not required to spend any money at this website. Everything it points to is free. Or if you do happen to click on an affiliate link, obviously you would pay for something, you would buy something. There are some Amazon affiliate links and some other things. All the products and services I use, or all of the affiliate links, are for things that I use or purchase myself. So for what that's worth. If you would like to support all of these efforts, you can buy me a coffee if you really want to, or you can follow some of those affiliate links. Otherwise, everything is free. So thanks for listening to this and my various other programs. And hey, if you want to learn more about the projects I'm working on, those are there too. There you go. So buymeacoffee.com/Dan Hugo. And don't forget, on Monday mornings, the Buy Me an Update audio program publishes to buymeacoffee.com/Dan Hugo/posts first. And then it appears on Spotify, Amazon, Apple, YouTube, an RSS feed, all the usual stuff. So keep that in mind. And then Coffee Solo publishes whenever. Okay, then. Let's get on with the show. How old are you now? That's part of a children's song, right? How old are you now? How old? I don't know the words. It's been a while. I don't even know. My birthday's coming up, but I say that every year. Anyone who has a driver's license or a passport or military identification or many other such credentials knows that there is a process involving a birth certificate, a photo, maybe a fingerprint. Nowadays, there might be some RFID. That's radio frequency identification, I think it is. Sometimes people call it NFC, near field communication. But I believe the RFID actual use case for NFC is to provide some sort of identity over a wireless near field communication, NFC. Hold a thing up to a scanner or a reader. Your thing might be a card, or it might be a passport, for example. There could be a barcode or a magnetic strip. Driver's licenses have had these for a while now, many years, or some other combination of things, extra markers and data sources. The important thing, the identity document has almost, or was almost, if not always, shown to a person, or more recently scanned electronically in some way and then compared against a visual check against your photo. If you've flown anywhere lately, first of all, sorry. Second of all, you may have had to pass your passport into a machine of some sort that takes your picture, and then you probably answer a question or fill out something on a keyboard. It's been a while since I've flown internationally as well, but something like that. And then now there's enforcement of real ID requirements, so you have to have had a correctly credentialed driver's license issued in whichever state you live in. The important thing, though, again, is that you're usually showing these things to a person or reading, having it scanned and reading it and looking at you. So you are in person with the credential in your hand or wherever you keep it. So that's something to keep in mind for all this age verification stuff from now into the near future, at least, because it will be a hot topic. Visual in-person verification. As the internet became popular, it was becoming clear that there may be some issues regarding the sharing of information with minors, not people that dig for coal and other such things. Minors, minors, young people, which they are not supposed to do for a variety of reasons. And of course, the possibility of actual safety issues, and worse, if young people engage with adults with a dangerous agenda. I think I've told this story somewhere in one of my productions. It was a while ago. There was, in the downtown project days in Las Vegas, there was, as it turns out, a child predator in the midst, and he used the internet to pretend he was younger. He was a criminal, a violent criminal, and there was a 14-year-old person involved. I think it was 14, 15. He, as far as I know, is still in prison. Good for him. But still, you never know. Even in person, nobody saw this in him. It took a while before we even knew he was weird. And it turns out he was also a violent criminal. Protecting young people from older people is probably a great idea. I would tend to agree. With too many instances of such interactions going wrong, this is not to say zero interaction. I mean, not all adults are bad. Most are fine. Some kids are annoying, but they're mostly fine also. But surely parental guidance, awareness, positive identity, as in knowing who you're talking to and who's talking to you, all good ideas in general. So I can't really complain too much about the motivation and some of the attempts. By the way, the person I just mentioned, what's his name? His name is Russell Wayne Deviney, Deviney. He is convicted, so I have no problem saying his name. Russell Wayne sometimes goes by Wayne Russell Deviney or Deviney. I have looked recently. I don't know what his current situation is. It's been a while since he was convicted. Unfortunately, too late. It would have been nice if somebody caught on to his shenanigans before, and I don't use shenanigans to minimize his crimes. He's a criminal. He deserves whatever he gets. And then I'm trying to just keep it clean, so shenanigans. Then there is the danger of media. Oh no, words. The reason for our ratings and magazines on the upper shelf or behind the counter in the old days to keep young people safe. I know that sounds like a little bit pedantic, but There are surely arguments to be made on either side, which may depend entirely on the nature of this scary and dangerous content. I mean, some things are like, other things are like, ooh, I don't even want to see that. Or read it or whatever. Oh, words are a little tricky. And on some of the unintended consequences are beyond the scope of today's episode. So, I mean, that's a longer conversation in general. Some people say, oh, it's a gateway to other things. And I don't think it's that kind of gateway so much as a way for adults to draw in young people with forbidden content. So maybe it's a gateway in the other direction, bringing people. And, I have to be honest, this was not the case with Russell Wayne Davini, but he did use trickery. He did misrepresent his own age and who he was and what he was looking for and so on, is how he took advantage of this young person. So there have been cases of young people being tricked or otherwise, for whatever reason, providing photos of themselves to someone who they thought was maybe their own age, but it turns out they were not. And then there's some blackmailing, and so it doesn't go well. So knowing who you're talking to and being aware that some adults have huge problems it's part of the thing. So it's one of the reasons I don't immediately dismiss all of this. I think it is actually a conversation worth having with me or anyone. So what does work with age verification in general? So your government issued identification works. It does, mostly, as well as can be expected, mostly. There are a collection of systems that rely on some trusted authority for identity, including age. So you are the sum of your name and your date of birth, and maybe where you were, which hospital you were born in, or any number of things. Your parents, maybe. Including age, your government is the default authority on this. There are too many cases where this has been disproved. The latest news about a Doge employee, remember Doge, copying all of the Social Security databases to take with him. And that's just one recent example. There are countless examples where various security flaws, just bad design and so on, have led to huge compromises of security and thus personal information that's now out in the wild. So you almost don't even have any notion of privacy or secrecy regarding some of these credentials, your social security number and various other, the email. Once you connect all these data together, oh, I know your social security number and your email address and your date of birth. That gets you a lot. And so if all that information is floating around, it's only a matter of time before someone who wants to do something with that information actually does. So it's one of the problems when you connect all these things to one, social security number, let's use it for everything. That can go south very quickly. An authoritative source of truth is essential, though. It is what we have now. It works as well as it works and fails as often as it fails, which is unfortunately often, but it's something we have. Probably the more important thing here is that there is the notion of an authority when it comes to identity, right? So a government document is treated as valid for these purposes. Now, whether it's actually authentic itself and hasn't been compromised or falsified outright, that's another question for another time, perhaps. Anyone who has been to an age-limited venue where you must show your identification knows how that process works, and that there are always possibilities with falsified identity credentials to represent a different birth date. Entire comedic movies have been made about this. Here, the photo needs to be close. You kind of need to look like the person in the photo or vice versa, because that is essentially the main test given by someone who may or may not have a good eye. They can't verify anything else on there, right? The document is used to prove a birth date in that use case. And the only way to authenticate that it is actually you holding this ID and showing it to the person is that you look like the person in the photo. So it's kind of a judgment call. In-person age checks are ephemeral unless information from the identity document is retained. And you can stick a pin in that. So when you show the ID, it may be crowded. Maybe they look at it under a little light and they look at you. Maybe they have a flashlight and they show, illuminate your face, and then they look at the picture and then they do a couple of double takes and they say, all right, then on to the next person. So that identity is not retained. That document is not retained The person may not even know what your name was. They may never even had a chance to look. Maybe it's too busy. So if we believe it is always ephemeral, that can also cause problems. I can't remember if I wrote this for later, but I'll simply say one of the places I used to hang out at in Vegas had a person working at the door who would literally take notes on some of the identities of some of the people that he found interesting. And we can leave it there. A little creepy. Online identity is not too difficult. There are a variety of ways to authenticate a person with a cryptographically secure credential, like an X509 certificate for email. Until this summer, there was publicly creatable client-side certificates to use to authenticate someone visiting a secure website. So you could do two-way authentication. I think they call it MTLS now. And these are useful as long as you know what the level of authentication is. If you're using this person verified their email address, client-side certificate, then you don't really know that the person is over a certain age or who they are. You only know that they have an email address. Oh, you have a free email account with Google? I guess you're who you say you are. You can only authenticate the email address in that case. X509 is not used as often as it could be, by the way. PGP is another free and open alternative. X509 certs are usually issued by a private company. Could be in a workplace, for example. I think we had X509s at Intel. This credential could include a date of birth or a simplified age range value, which we'll talk about later. And this infrastructure already exists. So you could literally verify your identity with a client-side certificate. So if you're connecting to a secure website, and thanks to Google, all websites are now pretty much, HTTPS. So a secure website, you can connect and then they'll do the two-way authentication, and you could authenticate that you are a person of, 18 plus age or whatever the case may be. So the question is what other information is available, but for the purposes of what does work, this infrastructure exists today. It has for decades. Checking the age may or may not be taking place if the data is not there. So certificates may or may not include a date of birth. They probably don't. But we have had that technology in place for a long time. If we assume the credential is trusted, and that's the tricky part, then the person is who they say they are mostly. So you can essentially assume that the client, it could be a piece of software, sending that certificate is authorized to do so by the actual owner of the certificate and the certificate, say that word slowly. The certificate is valid. There are cases where people don't manage those properly, but for the most part, we have a starting point for digital authentication with credible credentials. So all that infrastructure is already in place. We could use it. What does not work? I will interject here and say that I am not like a cybersecurity professional, but I did work at Netscape way back in the day in the security group. So we were doing SSL, which is now TLS, and secure email. So SMIME uses X509 certs. I myself use PGP. So I'm not an expert, but I'm also a little bit learned. So what does not work? The in-person scenario is subject to fraud with the so-called fake ID, obviously, and can be problematic if the person checking the credential manages to record information. For example, the example I gave. So the person was recording the identities of people, writing them down when he was checking their identity documents. And the problem with using your driver's license, as you know, is it has your name and address. When you show your identity to a person working at the door of a venue that wants to keep younger people out, for example, they really only need to see your birth date. And even then, they don't need to see your birth date. They need to see that you are over 21, for example. And they need to see that you are the person in the picture. They don't need to see any other information. So when you hand someone a credential, like a social security number, the document, so a driver's license, most often is used for something it is not really intended for. And once it has been used, it cannot be easily unused. You cannot tell that door person, just forget what you just saw there. Social security number, it's used to manage your social security savings account that the government has been keeping track of since the When did it launch? 32? No, I can't remember. It's been a while. But let's also use it to connect you to everything. So once someone knows your social security number, they can have access to a whole number, a huge number of things. Once they have your social security number, your birth date of birth, and your name or your email address is even better, then a lot of doors begin to open. Oh, let me update my passwords for all of my accounts. Here's my email address and my proof of who I am. And then it just gets easier from there. So the driver's license should not be used as it is, unfortunately. You can't take that back. You can't, you can't change your social security number. It's easier to change your driver's license, but what changes? You are still living where you were living. So it can be problematic. False credentials can be a problem in the analog world, right? The fake ID, and in digital form as well. And while the cryptography angle is supposed to help to address that, it seems there is always a way. And first of all, if you're only verifying your email address, PGP has what they call the Circle of Trust, I think it is. No, that's a movie. That's De Niro and what is it? Family? What, I can't remember. Meet the Fockers. I think that's what it was. So if I get a PGP certificate, I can authenticate that I have the control of this email address, but that doesn't mean I am who I say I am in the email address. So I can get your email address and I can get a PGP key. And as long as I can receive email at your email address, right? So I've hacked your email account. I can create false credentials. I can create a brand new email address that purports to be someone who it is not, right? I could be Stephen Hawking at gmail.com, right? Maybe, or Yahoo or whatever. Yahoo. Who uses Yahoo? So now I can create that credential. I can create that email address. I can create a public key, PKI, public private key pair, and then I can send email and I can sign it and I can encrypt people and you say you're Stephen Hawking, but other people can sign my key with their key. So if 10 people can say, yeah, he is Stephen Hawking, then you could say, well, I know 3 of those people. And if they say this is Stephen Hawking, great. I'm not Stephen Hawking. But so the trust model can become a little bit interesting if you don't really know who's saying that so-and-so is who they say they are and so on. Vouching for people is a tricky business. Friend of ours, friend of mine, that whole thing. The credential itself must have some sort of value or must be associated with some sort of penalty if it is misused by its owner or someone else. And there are penalties for using a false credential, for possessing it, or if it is stolen, for stealing it. That's usually the case with a driver's license. But if I steal your online identity, it could be a little bit more involved. Identity theft is a real crime, so I'm not saying it isn't. But if I'm able to obtain your credentials to log into YouTube, for example, and this was a sort of infamous LTT, Linux Tech, what is it called? Linux Tech Talks? I can't remember. Linus from Canada and his media empire. So someone, because when you log into YouTube Studio, you're just logged in. There are Java, JWT, what is it? Java something tokens? JavaScript, whatever it is, tokens. Cookies that are stored in your computer, or maybe there is a database of other identifying information, whatever the case. Someone in his team, what is it called? Someone in his team received an email. I think it was with a compromise or some sort of a hacked or PDF document, I think it was. And Linus Tech Tips. There you go, Linus Tech Tips. So someone in his production team received some sort of a compromised email, a phishing attack. So when he clicked on this, it actually installed something on his computer that was able to grab all of his cookies for his browser and whatever else. So they were able to obtain a logged in credential. So they connected to YouTube Studio and then deleted a bunch of stuff. There was all kinds of chaos, and he's a fairly high profile person. So by using some trickery, someone was able to obtain these credentials and pretend to be one of these production staff people. So that's a crime, right? They've committed any number of crimes, who knows? I'm not a lawyer. But the take home is that this must be taken super seriously. Why do people store cookie? Well, why do browsers store cookie files in the clear? They should be encrypted on disk. It's one of those things. Yeah, that one was sort of dumb. That could be fixed, but there needs to be a little bit of a culture shift to awareness. But there needs to be something that incentivizes people to be extra careful with these things. In that case, it was a fairly high profile fail that they worked around, and I think they were able to recover their information, their video content and whatnot. So the credential itself must always have value, though. So it always has to be driver's. You don't want to lose your driver's license because it's a ginormous pain. And then if somebody uses your ID falsely, you're probably not in trouble for that. I don't imagine you would be. Once they identify who misused it, you may be in trouble if they say, the ID that was used belongs to this person. So let's go pick him up. We have his address. So there's still some problems there. But in general, misusing or misrepresenting oneself with a credential, physical or digital, is a crime, I believe, across the board. So that's a good start. It's not always clear that the same penalties are in place for digital identity as they are for analog, though. So here again, there needs to be some awareness of how these things work and how they can be misused and what happens when they're misused and so on. Surely those who capture and save digital identity rarely receive sufficient penalty for mishandling those credentials. I think a security breach or a hack, I know there have been countless occasions where Veterans Administration, hospitals, or record-keeping facilities have been hacked. Credit institutions have been hacked. So once you have an SSN, a social security number, a date of birth, an email address, maybe you have a home address, all these things, as you get more and more information, then you can get yet more and more information as you start meandering through the system. Once you can log into one account, then you can prove that you are that person to log into another account, all manner of chaos. So there has to be value, not only for the owner of the credential, but for anyone who has it in their possession. Basically, the credential is only as good as the trust environment and the chain of verifiable authority. These have been shown time and time again to be vulnerable. This is one of the main arguments against age verification. The more people that you give your driver's license to, for example, online, the more likely it is that it will be compromised. And you have now I have a picture that I can, thanks to AI, I'm sure somebody's going to come up with a way of saying, I have this information from the ID, and I will create a falsified video image that I can show, oh yes, I'm alive and well, the turn your head photo thing. Someone's going to hack that if it hasn't been hacked already. So the more people you hand your information over to, whether it's a driver's license or anything else, the more vulnerable it is. There's a saying, something is only secret if only one person knows it. So true. The finer points of credential issuance, management, and revocation are often beyond the savvy of the casual person going on about their days. This is very apparent when it comes to the capture and storage of personally identifying information. Hey, I just said that. Of course. And the laws and regulations and processes, not processed, types of stuff. Processes, they're a good beginning if you ever want to explore how all this can go wrong. So you could look into that for yourself and say, oh my good, I'm not going to tell anybody anything. I'm John Doe. That's it. Basically, people are not really sure about the weaknesses in any identity system, in the chain of trust or the circle of trust, whatever it is. So however this system is built so that you can really authenticate the authenticators, for example, or not, that is the beginning of any form of trouble an adversary can design to get to you. I already said people can falsify a video so they can prove that they are, by moving in a video, that they are the person in the identity picture. Well, artificial intelligence is making that something of a different challenge. And again, I don't know if that one's been hacked yet. If it hasn't, it will be. I mean, come on. So what can we do about this? Proof of age is going to become more and more popular, a notion on both sides. So you either support it or you argue against. Usually it's a First Amendment argument in the United States. Other countries don't have that. So you can also argue that it's a vulnerability. You're basically forcing people to turn over personal information that could be misused or compromised, could be stolen. So people against usually have some pretty good arguments. people who support it also have some pretty good arguments. So awareness is going to be important no matter which important. No, I can't say it the way the kids say it. Important. No matter which side of the argument you find yourself. This is a challenging and unlikely hill to climb that people will become more aware, even with a physical credential like a driver's license or passport, which can now contain digital information, which can be or must be guarded in many scenarios. The kind of the well-known one, I don't know if it's ever really been used effectively, is a passport can be scanned by someone who has an RFID scanner. If they see, or if your passport is in a pocket or something, they can take the scanner and place it near there. And I don't know if passport information is encrypted in any way. Probably not. So it comes down to a comprehension of our digital world, even if the analog form is involved, like a passport or driver's license. So you really just have to know what's happening. So education in this area is going to be essential, and it's a steep and unlikely hill for many to climb. So it's the way it is. There are various attempts in the headlines lately whereby responsibility for age-related authentication is placed with companies which control software and sometimes hardware platforms. So think Microsoft, think Google, think Apple, think personal computers, tablets, phones, but also think Linux. I'm using Linux myself. BSD, which is used in a lot of places, FreeBSD, NetBSD, OpenBSD, maybe others. I don't really know much about BSD, but I don't want to insult anyone by saying it's like Linux, but it's an open source operating system. If you're a Sun OS person, you might know more about BSD, and any number of open and usually free operating systems and open and maybe low cost hardware. Maybe you're going to use one of those new Arduino Q thingies or a Raspberry Pi, and you're going to be running some variation of Linux or maybe some other open maybe you like the Haiku OS, whatever the case may be. So there's a requirement that's being floated in some state governments, the requirement of personal credentials being shared with companies. If we get that far. Right now, I think it's a attestation, like, yes, I am over 18. So you're not being required to send your identity to anyone yet, but that will happen. And with Linux, for example, this is not going to happen, to create a trusted authentication chain, your government credentials trusted as authoritative to prove your age to the operating system, which can then record it somewhere, probably in their cloud somewhere. And then they'll keep track of all that forever. And then when your iPhone tells some website, yes, this person's over 18, you're all good. You're all good to go. So Apple is now responsible for your identity. It happens to share your age in this case, but you probably have told Apple, Google, Microsoft, all these different players, you've shared enough information with them so they know exactly who you are and all that stuff. So it's only probably corporate reputation that prevents people from doing some untoward things. I don't know. I'm cynical. Some serious thought must be considered to remove this middle layer and prefer instead a trusted client-owned credential. We already talked about this, TLS certificates, X509, and client-side certs for websites and so on. These have all existed for decades, but unlike a physical driver's license, for example, that could be used for only a specific purpose. So, for example, and by the way, you could get I don't know, I think identity cards still require an address, but probably, it seems plausible, I should be able to get a physical identity card that only shows that I am over 21, for example. So if I visit a venue and they say, oh, okay, there's no checking of birth dates and there's no sharing of, address, but just, I have a government identity document here that says I am over 21. That's all you need to know. Here's my picture, 21 plus. We're good. So there's no reason to share additional information with the person working in, outside of a venue. Similarly, with a secure credential, online, digital, I should only have to provide some age range, which is indeed what some of this legislation proposes now. We'll get to that in a moment. Client-side certificates already exist, though. So you could literally, instead of relying on an operating system or some intermediate companies, you would issue someone a personal certificate that has, age range, I guess, for this purpose. So client-side certificates already exist. So I would suggest, perhaps as an example, why not enable the U.S. Postal Service, which is a federal government agency, as an example, and they need something to do to make money because they are certainly not cutting it right now, to act as an issuing authority for such credentials. You could literally, or you should be able to literally walk into a post office and show them your face and obtain a digitally signed, right? The post office would say, yes, this is correct. And you're good. There's really no need to involve third-party companies when you're trying to associate your government credentials with your personal, your person. I was going to say your personality now. Yeah. So I should be able to associate digitally myself and my authoritative documents provided by the government, because if that is the one true trusted source of information, so one source of truth, as they say, then the Postal Service, U.S. Postal Service, is an example of a government agency that does work with customers daily. They even come to homes and businesses. They could authenticate a business location for other certificate requirements. So there's all kinds of things that could happen that leave third-party companies out. Now, you still have to trust the U.S. Postal Service. You'd have to trust the federal government. That's a conversation for another time, but it's what we have right now for the unforeseeable future. There are many possibilities, many things to think of, to think through, and to ponder. So I will leave with this concern for you to ponder instead, because actual age verification is going to be an ongoing argument. The headlines are focusing mostly on that proof that someone visiting a website is at least 18 plus, which they leave out the 21 plus, which is kind of interesting. And because you can purchase wine online, I think you can still do that. And the proposed state legislation in a few places is looking at verification of age range. So you're not providing your date of birth, which is, okay, that's a good start, including one is unknown, but that's a different thing. So one age range is under 13. So COPA, the Child Online Privacy Protection Act from, when did that, was that in the late 80s or early 90s? I'm going to guess 90s, because probably not 80s. You have to be 13 to sign up for an online account. So under 13, come back next year, right? 13 to 15 and 16 to 17. I don't know why those ranges are selected. And then 18 and older. And again, I think there should be a 21 and older range. And that deserves more exploration left to the listener, why those age ranges and why not a 21 plus, etc. But I will leave you with this. Proof of age can be used to prevent people from visiting a website for whatever is offered there. But it can also be used to allow people to visit and to interact and so on. A platform focused on students, for example, student-aged people, for example, maybe wants to limit access to actual students under the age of 18. But a bad actor might be able to do just that. What if they're able to obtain some sort of, but they could just attest to the fact that they're, I'm 15. And that was basically not 15, but that was the scenario I described earlier with the awful, evil, and convicted felon, Russell Wayne Davini. You can pretend to be whoever you want, and now you can certify. It's like the blue check mark on Twitter. If everybody has one, then they're not worth it. A broader perspective, a practical basis of implementation and recognition that too many ways to provide these credentials may actually cause more problem than any of this might pretend to solve. So the more intermediates we have in place, the more ways, the more methods, the looser the protections against misuse, the lower the penalties for compromise. If so, we got hacked, $50 fine. The cost of the loss of this privacy, so many people having so easy access to social security numbers and other such information, as I've said. And these hacks, there have been millions and billions because they're variations, like one record is your current address and one record is your previous address, and so all these connections and interrelationships between people and addresses and emails and public, what is it? Publicly, what is it called? PII, privacy, publicly, no. Is it PPI? No, PII, personally identifying information. Thank you. Geez, I didn't even have to look that up. It finally just came to me. PII, personally identifiable information. So once you can get 10 or 20 records about you or me, all that information will start to intersect, and you say, oh, okay, this is their address history. This is their credit cards, and this is their, all this stuff starts to become like sensor fusion. Like you can start adding all this stuff together and you have a complete picture of who and what people are and what they're doing and so on. So the more possibilities, the more vulnerabilities. So that's where I'm going to leave it for today. I think the age verification problem is a thing. I mean, picking an age, a number of years since birth is a very coarse way to do things, but that's how laws work. You could have people take a test, right? Driver's test, you have to be 16, but you also usually have to, in many states, sometimes it's 17, I think, you have to take some sort of a driver test to get your actual license. So you have to be a certain age, plus you have to take a test. In order to view certain pieces of content on the internet, you must be 18. Is that the right age? Maybe. Legally, yes. Does someone at 18 have the capacity to consume what they're looking at? Maybe, maybe not, but that's not checked. So, and then above 18, it's a little bit more difficult until you're 21. And then the next milestone is 26, I think it is, to get out of the actuarial tables for insurance. But at the end of the day, these hard numbers, an actual number of years from a date of birth, are a very coarse test, but it's what's available. Maybe technology will make that easier or more granular. Maybe there will be a way to do that. But at this time, we do have the technology to do a better job about authenticating who a person is and verifying what their age is. So you could say the authentication is the person, and then you can authorize them to access certain things based on their age. But again, authentication and authorization, these are things that have been around for decades. There's countless numbers of experts on how this works. There are different cryptography algorithms. There are different workflows and processes and key management policies and everything. So I think when legislators compose these laws, probably with input from lobbyists and whatnot, they are not really taking the stance of like, what's the technology behind this, or how can this actually function in a useful way with existing systems that account for currently known vulnerabilities that have been taken advantage of countless times. So they just, it seems like a good idea. We'll just make 13 to 15, 16, 17, 18. You're like, where is this coming from? What is the deal here? So it will be, I mean, you could do a challenge response system. If the government had what is this person 18? And it could say yes, right? I could provide one credential that proves I am who I am, but doesn't provide any information. And it allows the share, when you log in with Google or something, it says this website wants access to your email address and your whatever, something similar to that, right? We already know how that works. I'm not saying that's a good idea. I'm just saying that these are ideas that could be pondered. I think there needs to be a lot more thinking from a lot more educated people. And then there's going to have to be an entire process of educating the rest of the public about how this does work so that people know how they can also be taken advantage of. I could go on, but I will not. 45 minutes, that's about the right length, I think, for this episode. It might be a little bit shorter with some of my pauses removed. But that's about all I have to say about that. If this is interesting to you, don't forget, I'm always up for a conversation, argument, debate, whatever the case. In the meantime, thanks for listening, and take care now. Bye-bye.